Alright, Recruit. So you've installed Anaconda and Python onto your computer. Now we just need to discuss how to actually run Python code. Now there are several ways to run Python code, but first, let's have a quick discussion on the various options for development environments. There are three main types of development environments: text editors, full IDEs, and notebook environments. Text editors are basically just general editors that work for any sort of text file, and they're generalized, meaning they can work for a variety of programming languages and work with a variety of file types. They can be customized with additional plugins and add-ons to give them looks, feels, and extra functionality that a user may want. However, for general text editors, you should keep in mind that most are not designed with only Python in mind. They're designed to be general text editors for a variety of languages. The most popular text editors currently are probably Sublime Text and Atom, with Sublime Text probably being one of the most popular development environments for just a variety of languages. Then we come to full IDEs. IDEs stands for Integrated Development Environments. A full IDE is a development environment specifically designed for Python. This is ideal for larger programs or when you're working at a company where everyone should have the same working environment to have the same look, feel, and basically protocol for designing code. You should keep in mind that integrated development environments typically are produced by some sort of company, so you need to pay for them, and only their community editions are free. Now they are designed specifically for Python, so they have tons of extra functionality, but sometimes that may feel bloated, especially if you just want to quickly write a small script. The most popular full IDEs for Python are PyCharm and Spyder. And if you install the full Anaconda Python distribution, you actually already have Spyder with the install. Finally, there's notebook environments. Now, notebook environments are really great for learning. They allow you to see input and output right next to each other. But even better than that, they actually support inline markdown notes, visualizations, videos, and more. Meaning you can actually take notes that are not code, basically just little notes for yourself explaining the code, and then right below it, you can have a little cell that actually runs code. What you should note though is that they actually require a special file format that is not a .py file, and because it's not a .py file, you can't really double click on a notebook file on your computer. You need to open it through the Jupyter Notebook environment, which we'll show you how to do in just a little bit. Notebook environments are also typically not suitable for really large projects with multiple files. They're better for just learning how to code and really small, quick projects. If you want a larger script or larger program, maybe check out text editors or full IDEs. The most popular notebook environment for Python is the Jupyter Notebook. Now, the most important thing to note is that development environments are a very personal choice that's really highly dependent on your personal preference. Some people really love the Jupyter Notebook environment, and they actually use the Jupyter Notebook environment for developing really large projects. Peter Norvig, who's the director of research at Google, is a big fan of the Jupyter Notebook system. Other people really dislike the notebooks. They don't like that it opens in your browser, and they prefer text editors that they're used to, or maybe they prefer IDEs. And typically, programmers who are very experienced in another language tend to prefer IDEs or text editors because it's a smoother transition for them. Whatever your preference is, choose whichever development environment you prefer. What we're going to do now is explore how to actually run Python code. We're first going to explore with an editor to create a .py script and then run the file at your command line. Then we're going to explore how to run code in a Jupyter Notebook and the various extra features of the Jupyter Notebook. Throughout your training in your bootcamp, we'll be using Jupyter Notebooks, but again, please feel free to use whatever development environment you prefer. It's quite a personal choice. To actually work with an editor, we first need to download one. So we'll download the Sublime Text Editor, and we can do that by going to www.sublimetext.com. All right, here we are at sublimetext.com, and typically it will auto-detect what operating system you're on, and it will have a little button for you saying download for OS, Linux, or Windows. It's a very simple text editor, and it's probably the most popular text editor in the world. And it has a really interesting pricing scheme. It's technically not free, but they give you an unlimited free trial where they will just have a little pop-up every once in a while asking you if you're ready to upgrade to buy it. So again, it's technically not free, but it has an unlimited free trial for the rest of your life. It will just have a little pop-up asking you to purchase the full license. So click here on download and then select the download for your operating system, either OS X, Windows 64-bit, or Linux. So typically what you should do is just go to the home page and then click whatever download that it auto-detected for you. Once you've downloaded it, we'll go ahead and open the Sublime Text Editor. Once you've downloaded and installed Sublime Text, you should be able to search your computer for Sublime Text, click on it, open it up, and it will look something like this. Next, what we're going to do is actually type out some Python code and then save this as a .py script. Go ahead and type print, open and close parentheses, and then in single quotes or double quotes, hello world. And this will be your first Python script. And then select File, Save As. And the reason we're doing that is if you notice, right now, there's no syntax highlighting. That is to say, everything is the same color for this font. So Sublime Text Editor doesn't actually know that this is a Python script. What we want to do is save it as, and we're going to call this file my example. And you'll notice if you click on all files, you have lots of extensions to choose from. We're going to choose to save it as a Python file. So you're going to say my example, save it as a Python file. The other option you can do is just select all files and then say my example and yourself write .py. Either way is fine. Go ahead and save it, making sure it's a .py file, hit save. And now you'll notice Sublime Text Editor understands that it's a Python script file, and it's performed syntax highlighting to help you read this. Print is a function, hello world is a string. And we're going to be learning a lot more about that and Python in general later on in your training. For now, let's see how to actually run this script. Remember that we've saved it to our desktop, meaning at our command line, we need to change directories to our desktop so we can run this actual .py file. Go ahead and open up your command line. Since I'm on Windows, I will open up a command prompt. If you're on Mac OS or Linux, you'll open up a terminal. Then you'll want to change directory to your actual desktop or wherever you saved this .py file. So type cd and then desktop to change directory to your desktop. And then what you should be able to do is type out Python space, and then begin typing out the name of your file. In my case, it was example.py, and to prove to yourself that we're in the correct location, you should be able to hit tab and it will autocomplete. So here we say Python myexample.py, and this is how you can run a .py script at your command line. Hit enter, and you should be able to see hello world. Now you successfully created a Python script in your text editor, and you ran that script at your command line. What you can also do is just type Python by itself at your command line, hit enter, and this is a very simple direct connection to Python, allowing you to type Python code directly at your command line. We won't really be using this throughout your training because it's only one line at a time, and eventually we'll be using and learning about writing more than one line at a time for code, but you can also just check it out, type print hello, enter, and you'll notice you have hello as the output. So this is basically one line at a time. You can write Python code. Then we can type quit, open and close parentheses, hit enter, and we've quit out of the Python interpreter. All right, so we just learned how to actually run a Python script at your command line. Now let's explore the Jupyter Notebook environment and see how that works. To do so, we'll go to our Anaconda Navigator. So search your computer for Anaconda Navigator, open that up, and then once you've done that, go ahead and launch the Jupyter Notebook. Once you click on that launch button, you should notice that your browser automatically opens up to localhost either 8888 or 8889 or some other series of numbers. Keep in mind that while Jupyter Notebook does operate inside of your browser, it does not require an internet connection. Everything is happening locally. There's no internet connection between Jupyter and some other server somewhere. It just happens to open up and operate in your browser as a convenient graphical interface for you to program in. So once you launch Jupyter Notebook, you'll notice that you can view all the files on your computer. For example, we can click here on the desktop folder, and now I can see that my example.py script we had just created earlier. And using the Jupyter Notebook system, you can actually add on and edit .py files. So for example, we could add on another print statement here, new, and then save this change. So we could say save, and then we could also download or rename the file and a bunch of other stuff. But we're not going to be using Jupyter for this sort of text editing. It's probably better to use Sublime Text Editor, but again, it's personal preference. What we're really going to be using Jupyter for is the notebook system. So you can click here where it says new, and under notebook, you should see Python 3. Sometimes it says conda root or something else, but click on what it says under notebook. Typically it says Python 3. And then you'll notice that we just started a new notebook. So let's have a quick overview of what this actually is. Here it says untitled, and that's because this notebook that we just created doesn't actually have a title. And if we click back here to this other tab, you'll notice we just created an untitled.ipynb file. That stands for IPython notebook file. Jupyter Notebooks used to be called IPython Notebooks, so they kept the file extension name. And if we want to change this name, all we have to do is go back to this tab, select Untitled, and give our notebook a new name. So we will say My First Notebook, hit Enter, and we've renamed the notebook as well as the actual file. You'll notice now it says My First Notebook.IPython Notebook extension. So coming back to this notebook, the notebook uses a cell-based system, meaning you write code in a cell, you run the cell, and then see the actual output right below the cell. So let's try running our simple print statement. Inside of a cell, type print, open close parentheses, hello, and you'll notice that Jupyter auto-completes some things for you, such as quotes or parentheses. And then we can run this cell. So you can click here on the run button, and it will run this cell, and you will see the output directly below. This is a great system for people who are just starting to learn about Python because they can quickly iterate and fix mistakes because they have their code and they can see the output directly. They don't have to be constantly going to the command line and running their scripts. Again, it's definitely a personal preference, but this is a nice feature of the notebook for people that are learning Python. And you'll notice that we automatically create another cell below, which you can type more Python code in. For example, print new. And if you don't want to have to click that run button every time, all you have to do is do Shift Enter, and that will run a cell. Again, that's Shift Enter to run a cell. If you just hit Enter by itself, you'll just create more new lines. So it's Shift Enter to run a cell. There's lots of other useful hotkeys where you can click on Help and then hit keyboard shortcuts, and it will list all the keyboard shortcuts. The most useful ones we'll be teaching you later on, but you can always explore that yourself. Now we also discussed that the notebook system can actually hold markdown text. That is just normal text that is not code that you can just use for yourself to type out notes as you're learning throughout this bootcamp. So if you click on a cell, you'll notice here it says code, and that's because this is currently a Python code cell. If you want to make it into just a normal markdown cell, select from this dropdown Markdown, and now this is no longer a code cell, it's just a cell that will just have normal text in it. And you'll notice that it no longer has this in right in front of the cell, so that also indicates that it's just for normal text. So here you can write yourself just notes that will help you understand, and if you do Shift Enter, it will then display them as just a normal text. So again, this is no longer code, it's just text for yourself. And a lot of the notebooks we provide throughout your training will have markdown text as explanation. And if you ever want to write another code cell, you can just hit on a cell and then make sure that it's selected code. And you should be able to print whatever you want here. Shift Enter to run it, and that's the very basics. We'll be talking a lot more about notebooks later on throughout your training, but that's really the basics. The last thing I want to note is that this special extension of the notebook file, this .ipynb, means that you actually can't double click on this file on your computer and expect it to open. So let me show you what I mean by that very quickly. You'll notice that if I come to my desktop, I can see here my example.py, and if I double click on this, it will actually open up in whatever default program I have for it, typically Sublime Text Editor or whatever other editors you have on your computer. So you can double click on .py files, edit them, and work with them. However, if you try double clicking on a .ipynb file, you'll end up getting something asking you, how do you want to open this file? Or it will just kind of open up and you'll just see a bunch of scrambled code. That means that you can only open these special notebook files through the Jupyter Notebook system. So you'll have to open up Anaconda Navigator, launch a Jupyter Notebook, and then actually find it throughout your computer and click on it. All right, that's the very basics of running Python code. It's time to actually learn Python. We'll see you there, recruit.